Starting with Kubernetes is relatively easy. What is hard though is doing it the right way, applying all the best practices, and preventing misconfiguration to affect the reliability and the security of your production environments. Luckily, there is a tool that not only can do it for us, but is also very powerful, really easy to use, and you can start with it for free. Datree. And it also rhymes. Today I'm gonna tell you everything about it, how to install it, what it can do for us, how to use it locally in your environments and also in your CI systems, and of course, why we should use it. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to CoderDave, where we talk about DevOps, especially with GitHub and Azure DevOps. If you've been following the channel for a while, you know that I'm a big proponent of the shift left strategy. When it comes to validation and security, however, there are only a handful of tools designed with the shift left in mind. And if we talk about Kubernetes specific tools, you can count them on the fingers of one hand. Today we talk about one of those tools that promises to be the one-stop shop for Kubernetes and Helm configuration and best practices validation. And boy, it delivers. The tool I'm talking about is called Datree. It's a CLI-based tool that works on Windows, Linux, and macOS, and it's actually open source. In fact, you can find the link to the repo in the description below. Datree can do several things for us, and we will explore them all in just a second, but the key point for me is that it works just the same whether it's in the local development environment, in any CI platform, or anywhere else. It can even be configured as a pre-commit Git hook, allowing us to truly shift the Kubernetes validation left. At the time of recording this video, Datree uses some 30 rules based on best practices, and it allows you to customize those rules. And in a very near future, just this month, it will allow you also to create your own custom rules to fit all your needs. Alright, but enough talking, let's install it and see it in action. Installing Datree is really easy. You just need to go to datree.io, and right in the homepage you have the command to install it on Linux and macOS. If, like me, you are on Windows, then you need to use PowerShell, and to see the command to install it, just go to the documentation page, scroll down a little bit, and here you have the instructions to do so. It's just one line command that you can copy and paste in your PowerShell command prompt that needs to run as administrator. And this will basically just download the PowerShell script and execute it to install Datree. As you can see, it takes only a few seconds. And last thing we need to do is set the path for our Datree command line, as you can see here. There we go. As you've seen, the installation is really quick, and there is even a containerized version of the tool for you to download and try if you prefer that approach. There is one more step that we should do for a proper configuration, and we will see that in a second, but let's first try and use the tool. In this folder, I do have some Kubernetes manifests for deployment and service. All I have to do is invoke the Datree command with the test and the file or files I wanna scan. In this case, let's do the service YAML. In just a few seconds, the service will give me the results, and in fact, here we go. As you can see, the tool does multiple things. It validates the YAML, so it's basically also a YAML linter. It validates the Kubernetes specific schema against a predefined version, in this case 1.18, and I'll show you in a second how to change that. And of course, it checks the manifest against the policies. In this case, we can see that everything went well, all the validation have passed. Out of 21 rules that have been evaluated against, all 21 have passed. Let's try and do the same thing for the other file, the deployment manifest. And again, just a few seconds, and we have the result. As you can see here, not everything went well. The YAML validation went well, the Kubernetes schema validation passed, but the policy check didn't. For each rule that hasn't passed, we have the name of the rule and how many times there has been an exception inside that file for that rule. We have where that rule validation failed, and we have an output message or informational message that gives us more information about the issue and possibly how we can solve it. Apart from the rule results, we still have our summary over here. And you can see that out of 21 rules, 8 rules have failed and 13 have passed. But another thing you can see here is that we have this link that takes us to the Datree Dashboard using this CLI ID or token that is automatically generated the first time you run a scan on a new system. If we click on that link, the Datree Dashboard login will pop up. If it's your first time using this service, you will be able to sign in using either GitHub or a Google account. When I sign in, this will load the dashboard that is actually the centralized policy management. As you can see, we have 21 rules active over the 30 predefined, which is exactly the same thing we have in our Datree scan. For each of the rule, we have the name of the rule, we have the category of that rule, and of course we have the status. We know that they are enabled or disabled. And also for each rule, we can have the details for both name of the rule and informational message. And if this is not enough, we can click on this info button that will take us to the documentation of the service in which we have the complete information for each single rule. Going back to the dashboard, there's one more thing I want to show you right now. Datree does the Kubernetes schema validation based on a specific version, and the default version is the 1.18. How we can change that? Well, we have two ways. First, we can go to the settings and change the version over here. As you can see, we can go from the 1.15.0 all the way to the 122.1. But if we change it here, this will apply to every single scan connected to this account. If we want just to execute a one-off scan using a different schema, we can use the Datree CLI just passing a specific flag, the --schema-version with the version that we want to scan on. In this case, the 120.0. You can see that now Datree used the 120.0 as predefined schema for the validation to be run on. Pretty cool, right? The interface of the dashboard is pretty minimal, but I have to say that I do like it because it contains all and only the information you really need, so it's not confusing. As I've mentioned before, there is one quick configuration change that we should make, but I wanted to show you the tool in action without that because it just works. So really easy setup and you're ready to go. But let's do the configuration right now. Before I said that the centralized policy management is one of the key features of the Datree service. But I also said, whenever we run a first scan on a new system, Datree will generate a token for us to connect to the service. So how those two things get together? How can we ensure that the centralized policy management is actually centralized for all of the scans in all the different systems we have, whether it are local developer environments or CI/CD platforms and so on and so forth? The key here, again, is the token. If we go to the settings, we do have this token associated with my user. And this is, all I have to do is copying this token and use it in the configuration of Datree. Let me open another command prompt. Let's go to the .datree folder inside my user folder. And in here we have this config.yaml. We can edit that. The only value in here is the token. All I have to do is replacing this token with my token. And now, if I execute again the scan, we should be able to see. How we can see it? Well, we can go to the history and see that we have this scan just a few seconds ago, which is on my deployment file, and have the exact output of my scan. We can also see, of course, that in the CLI ID, now we have the exact same token that I just pasted. Going back to the history, this is very interesting because Datree records every single scan you do. And not only you have the usual informations like when you have executed it and which version, but also the entire output of the tool. Now that we have our Datree CLI connected to this account, we can customize the service. We can, for example, enable or disable rules. Let's say I want to enable these 5 rules. As soon as I do so, I can retry the scan. And now you see that my scan considered 26 rules rather than the 21 rules we had before. So as soon as I did any change in my dashboard, those have been automatically propagated to my CLI here and to any other CLI that are connected to my account using the token. Apart from enabling and disabling rules, we can also do some more customization. For example, we can change the message that those rules generate. Let's open this one, for example. And this is very useful if you have some custom links that you want to add, or you have other information you want to show on how to solve that specific issue. For example, let's say you want to redirect your users to your internal wiki. You can add the link over here, submit it, so basically save it. And as soon as we do so and we rerun the scan, we should see that the new message is being propagated. And in fact, here we have it. Again, power of the centralized management of the policies. As you have seen, with the token in place, we can finally customize the rules, we can enable and disable them, and all the changes are automatically propagated to all the CLI tools that are running in our organization because of the centralized policy management system. But we can do more. We can in fact create multiple set of rules or policies using the Datree naming. Let's say we want to have a different set of rules based on another application type or another context. All we have to do is click on Create Policy, give it a name, and let's save it. Here we can enable only the rules we want, any other change, and now we can rerun our scan. Of course, if we run our scan just like before, the service will use the default policy. So if we want to use this other policy, we can do so with the same command line, but using the -- policy flag with the name of the policy, which in this case was simple policy. We execute the scan, and now in fact we can see that only 4 rules have been evaluated because we have only 4 rules in our policy. Of course, we can also clone a set of rules, and we can delete policies as well. Obviously, we cannot delete the default policy. You just need to be careful because if you delete one of the policies in here, and you're trying to execute the service against that policy that doesn't exist anymore, the service doesn't fall back to the default policy, but gives you an error that the policy you're trying to use is not found because, of course, we've just deleted it. There is one more thing about policies and rules that I want to show you because it's been very recently introduced in the product and will make all of you code enthusiasts very happy. I'm talking about policies as code. To use the policies as code feature, first, of course, we need to enable it. Just go to the settings, and here you have this policy as code with the switch. Let's switch it on, and the feature is enabled. Remember that once the policy as code mode is enabled, the only way to change the policies in your account is by publishing a YAML configuration file with the defined policies. And we can either download a policies file that is pre-made, which basically is the default policies, or we can create one from scratch. But I would recommend, especially if it's your first time, to download the policy file and edit that. Let's open it. And as you can see, it's just a normal YAML file with our policy. We can change the default policies, or we can create a new one. To disable a policy that you don't want, you just comment that out. And of course, to change the message, as we've done before in the UI, you can change the message here. Let's copy this and create our second set of policy. Let's call it policy 2. Of course, this will not be the default. Let's comment out and change some of the rules, and let's save this file. Now all I have to do is go into the folder where I have that file and do Datree publish my YAML file with the policies. And this will publish the policies, the new policies, to the service. Once a new policy configuration file is published, it will override the existing policy setup in your account, so be careful about that. And now we can try to execute the scan against our policy 2 that we've just created using the -- policy command we've seen before. And we should be able to see the modified policy being evaluated. And in fact, we have 25 rules that have been considered. If now we go to our dashboard and we click on policies, we don't see here the custom policies. Well, we do see that now this has been marked as read-only mode, because policy as code is enabled, as I mentioned before. But we do have a possibility to export these policies to make it as a base for our own YAML file. I think using policies as code is super interesting because then, as we do with the normal source code or with all the other as code kind of models like infrastructure as code, configuration as code, etc., we can store them in our source control, and we can use all the normal coding practices like code review or pull requests to make sure our policies are exactly as we want them to be. All right, it's time now to see how to use all of these in our CI systems. But before we do so, hit the like button below if you're enjoying this video or you find it insightful, so it can be recommended to more viewers and they can benefit from it. And of course, it would really mean a lot to me. Thank you. Let's start with GitHub Actions. To integrate Datree in our CI, we just need to install Datree. In this case, I'm on Linux, so I use the curl command. And then we just scan our files using the Datree test. In all the examples I had in the local environment, I was using a single file, but Datree also supports scanning on multiple files. In this case, I have multiple YAML files in the Kubernetes folder, so I'm just passing the folder itself and star.yaml. The only thing we need to do differently from the local system is that since we don't have access to the configuration file on our CI, we can pass the token, the same token we have in our dashboard, as an environment variable. In this case, I'm passing it as environment variable to the step. But if you have multiple scans, you can add that at workflow level or at job level. That works the same. This step is necessary for the hosted agents because you start afresh every single time. If you're using self-hosted agents instead, I would probably recommend installing these on the agent directly, even though it doesn't take long to be installed. In fact, we can try and execute these and you'll see that this will take just a few seconds to execute. And I'm using this as a standalone definition, but of course you can integrate it in your normal CI workflow. As you can see, it's been really quick, and the scan has failed because if we expand the log, we can see again that the YAML validation passed, the Kubernetes schema validation passed, but we have again failing in the policy checks. The output is exactly the same, the summary table, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, by default, this will break your build or break your pull request check if you use this inside a pull request when rules validation fails. I would really use this as part of my pull request validation because I want this to fail as soon as possible in the workflow to respect the shift left strategy. Let's take a look at Azure Pipelines. The situation here is very similar. We just need to install the tool and then use the Datree test command to scan our files. Also in this case, we need to remember to use the token and to pass it as an environment variable to the CLI to be able to link this scan to our user. Let's run this. And again, this will take just a few seconds. All is running. And as expected, the pipeline failed because once again, we have some policy violation here because some of the rules have failed. All the rest is the same, all the considerations are the same. The integration, as you've seen, is really seamless. Of course, I would prefer having some native action or pipelines tasks instead of using the CLI manually, but I think it's very easy to use anyway. And stay tuned because I may have something for you around this in the near future. Anyway, not only is it very simple to use, but it really takes very short time to be set up and actually scan. And this is really important because we want to be able to execute our scans as soon as possible and as quickly as possible in our processes. And the same goes for the local development and shifting left, because in fact, if something requires a lot of effort or time to be used or run, then nobody will do it. Luckily, this is not the case with Datree, because it really delivers a fast and reliable validation of your Kubernetes and Helm manifest that allow you to shift left with this process. And speaking of Helm, let's quickly see that part in action as well. Datree provides a Helm plugin, so the validation can be run directly from the Helm CLI. Once installed using the Helm plugin install command, you can just run the Helm Datree test command, passing the folder containing your Helm charts as a parameter. After the scan is completed, you will have the same results as you do running the Datree CLI directly. Cool, right? But I have one more thing for you. Let's talk about pricing. As I've said before, Datree is free to start with, but it's actually totally free for a great number of scenarios because you get 1000 policy scans per month and it refreshes every month. And that's quite a bit because it doesn't matter if you scan one file or hundreds of files in a same scan because one Datree test execution counts as only one policy scan. So you can see that you have quite a bit of scans to do each month for free. But if you need more, there are of course some paid options. You can get 2000 policy scans a month and additional support with the Pro plan, and customizable amount of policy scans and dedicated support with the Enterprise plan. And if you sign up now using the link in the description, you can get the premium plan for free for 1 month. So what do you think about Datree? Is it something you will consider adopting as part of your development workflow? Let me know in the comment section below because I'm really curious about it. Especially with GitHub and Today I'm gonna talk you now. When it comes to validation and security, however, you can find the link to its repo in the comments below. No, in the comments. For you to download and Hit the like button below if you're enjoying this video or you find it, or task on pipeline. But I have one more things for you. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are. Is it something? Also check out this video over here, in which I'll show you how to deploy to Kubernetes from Azure Pipelines starting from scratch. But that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching, I really hope you enjoyed it. Hit the like button below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I see you in the next video here at CoderDave.